Thank you. You ready to go?
Yeah.
I call to order the City Council meeting of September 20th, 2017. The first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight that will be led by Jay Thomas.
Everybody please rise. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated, please.
I'll now open citizens' comments. If you're here to speak on anything this evening, now would be the opportunity. You have 3 minutes.
No sense. Steve Jones, 3234 West, 6920 South. Had no sense having a boring meeting. Thought long and hard about the legislation support that was done last week. And there was a couple of comments that were made in talking with Senator Thatcher that I've really been thinking about over the last week, and making a definition between things. And, he asked me, as far as an individual versus something that happens to a piece of property, the intent of what's there. And after thinking about it, one of the things that kind of jumped to my mind was when something's done to an individual, it's done to that individual, and we never hear about it. So regardless of what that individual says in his free speech, regardless of how hateful it is, how miserable his comments might be, that's done to an individual. And to raise that victim to a higher level than somebody else when something is not said, to me, is wrong. Versus the context of somebody doing something with the intent to cause terror. Somebody, the case that the senator used was to a synagogue, writing a swastika on it. And the intent there is to cause it to a larger group of people by that display. And therein, I think, is where the difference with what he was showing, and I think some of the holes that he has in that legislation, there is a difference. I still think that we as individuals should be treated, regardless of who we are, fairly and the same under the law. And we shouldn't be elevated as an individual. I think that does basically cause us to be second-class citizens when we start doing those elevations. So just a little food for thought to think about. Thank you.
Jay Thomas, 1348 West Barton Hollow Drive. Mine is more of a question to the council and mayor and public works. Is there a definite deadline of when the 70th South construction is going to be completed? And second question, is there a deadline penalty for not meeting the original deadline? Because when I've been out and about talking to a lot of our community, that seems to be the number one being there bonded, so to speak, because it affects, even if you don't live right off the 70th, which thank goodness, at least the section I live in is semi-done, but it still affects traffic on 90th and 78th and all of the side streets such as 27th, 22nd, 32, and it just goes on and on and on. So if you've got those dates, I would love to have you guys tell us and maybe publicize that somehow, because that is a big, big question. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll allow our city manager to answer those two questions.
Thank you. With your approval, Mayor, Council, we've been reviewing the contracts that have been entered into with Knife River. The two phases are referred to as Phase A and Phase B. Phase A is the area roughly from 13th, and Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong, from 13th up to Redwood. 19, sorry. 19 to Redwood. That phasing this year will be concluding around October 24th. Will it be finished? Well, I'm fairly certain it's not. Now, the next phasing is Redwood up to 3,200. That deadline for their completion is October 30th. There are liquidated damages in the contract. We have lawyers reviewing them as, actually, Mr. Linares is working with me to identify just what those damages will look like. And I suppose it would be speculative to suggest what they will be at this point, but I think it's fair to say they will not have those, that road repaired and finished by October 31st, in light of additionally the fact that UDOT has confirmed they cannot enter Redwood Road this year. They have already advised them they will be shutting down and have to return in the spring. The lawyers speak for as best answer as I can give you. No, sir.
Anyone else? I will close the citizens' comment portion. Move to item 4A, public hearing. Receive public input regarding a ballot proposition to change the City of West Jordan's form of government to a council mayor with 7 council members. I will now open the public hearing for item 4A. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4A, now is the opportunity.
This is about the form of government, correct?
Yes.
All right. Chad Lamb, 1434 West, 7460 South. I'm not here to change the council's mind. That's not what I'm here for tonight. I'm here just to speak publicly on record that as a member of the ad hoc committee that studied the form of government here in West Jordan, our committee did get together. We studied the many forms that are available. We studied the impacts that we'll have to West Jordan. And just on public record, I want to remind the public what we came up with, and that was that it wasn't the form of government that was the issue here in our city. It's those that are running and elected officials here in our city. So I think whether or not it's a strong mayor or whether or not it's a weak mayor form of government, it's those that are on the council, it's the mayor, it's those that work together as a whole that we can make this city the city that it is and not change it. And change the form of government is not going to make a huge difference like some believe it is. And so I'll put on public record and say that I think the form of government we have is great. It has been working, and I don't think a change is needed at this time for West Jordan. Thank you.
Steve Jones, 3234 West, 6920 South. Here's the part that I thought that is a big difference to me, and I'll disagree just a little bit with Chad. Right now, when I have an issue, I have 4 votes up there. I have 4 individuals that I have direct contact with that answer to my vote. Under the strong mayor form of government, that is not the case. If I have a disagreement with the mayor or whoever's in charge, that individual has under this plan, has the ability to veto what is done on that council. In order to overturn that veto, I've got to have 5 up there agree with what I'm trying to get across. So now it's harder for me as a citizen to get things through the system. And one of those votes up there, I have no direct responsibility to. There's no voting for that individual. I'll use the case of Councilman Anderson, and he's been very gracious, and I've gone to some things with him, and to me he's stepped outside the box because he's a good guy. All right, I mean, I appreciate that. But if I don't have somebody that's like him that still listens to me and listens to my comments, I now have to try to get somebody that does not answer to me to try to overturn something that one individual has vetoed. So I think there is a big difference. Thank you.
Jay Thomas, 1348 West Barton Hollow Drive. First off, I want to thank the current city manager and his staff, because I think you guys are doing a great job. Thank you. I think the city council is doing a wonderful job also. With that being said, I appreciate you guys putting this on the ballot so that at least we get a citizen vote and can get done with it and move on. Regardless of what the outcome is, then we can go forward. But I do think this has been a big detraction from doing a lot of the city business. And so I appreciate that you allow the citizens to make that decision. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing to item 4A and move to item 5A, business item. Approve Resolution 17-178, authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 6 to Knife River Corporation for work required for the 70th South Utility Project, Phase 2B, in an amount not to exceed $114,206.60. Justin?
Thank you, Mayor. As you remember, we talked about this last week. It's a change order for work being done on 70th South. The project manager, Dave Murphy, is here to be able to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from council? Councilmember Newton.
David, I want to make sure that we understand, is this work that has been done or still needs to be done?
This is work that, there is a time aspect to this change order, and this is work that has already been accomplished. This work was authorized and by work directive prior to the roadway change order that was authorized by council on June 30th. That change order forced all future change orders to be over 10%. These work directives were given at a time in the contract starting on February 23rd and ending June 1st that were prior to the roadway change order. And thus they were actually all under 10% at that time. And so we did that as normal policy, and that's normal methods for public works contracts. All change orders under 10% go through staff and go through the city manager for authorization and approval. And then at that point, after 10%, the city council sees everything. But because this change order was out of sequence, it is now over 10%, and now you're seeing it, even though it's work that has already been pre-authorized.
So pre-authorized, but it is done?
By work directive under 10%, and it is done.
It is done. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. So can you kind of explain for me the process, how it goes from a work directive to a change order and kind of the steps that go along that way?
Right. Because a big contract like this has to move very quickly in the field, when there are items that are going to hold up work, we issue what's called a work directive, where we sit down and we look at it, we look at the adjustments that need to be made, price, time, if plans need to be changed and adjusted, and we issue new drawings. All of that is done under the work directive envelope, and it gives us time in the next 30 to 60 days to 90 days, however long it takes to get to the final price. That becomes from a work directive to a change order at that point. So that's the carryover. But the work directive allows the work to move ahead in the field, not stop the contract waiting for the change order to be finished, and then move to a change order at the appropriate time, anywhere from 30 to 90 days later.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So you or somebody authorizes them to proceed to do the work prior to getting a cost on how much the work will cost, and then after work is done, then we find out the price? Is that what I heard?
And typically, a work directive will go based on unit costs. It'll go based on a cap on costs or an estimate on costs, any one of those three. And we actually take the time sometimes on the work directives, even a day or two, to work out costs ahead of time. So it's not without knowing the large envelope of costs, basically. But it's not fine-tuned because, say we add one more unit, say another manhole to that change order, then we're just adding additional costs, but it's based on a certain value. And typically, there's a not-to-exceed price on a work directive.
Was there not to exceed price on this one?
There were not-to-exceed prices all throughout the various sections of this because it covers about, let me give you a count. 1, 2, 3, about 6 different work directives.
Okay. So this one that we're looking to authorize now is $114,206.60. So I'm supposing that when it was authorized, it was probably a ballpark number that was approved, and then you got this price afterwards.
Yes, in some cases, yes.
Okay. When was this authorization provided to the contractor? Do you have that date for this particular change order?
February 23rd, May 5th, June 1st, May 29th, May 31st, for the various different work directives.
Okay. And then when was that large change order approved that put all these in the chute where they need to be approved?
June
now?
30th.
June 30th.
Yep.
And when was this work actually performed?
This work was performed basically between February 23rd and last week.
And we're in September right now.
Correct.
So from February 23rd, then the other one was approved in June 30th. So it took several months to get the exact price for you to approve a change order.
Yeah, we had these final prices in hand about a month and a half ago. We've just been waiting for it.
And
to
had you
get
had this
done.
before June 30th, we wouldn't even be hearing this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So once that one is approved on June 30th, because it's such a large amount, how much is the 10%, by the way?
10% on this contract would have been $650,000.
Okay. So up to that time, you had all these little ones, even though they add up, they didn't add up to over 600,000.
No, they did not.
But the one you approved in June added up to be more than 600,000, which means every job from now on has to come through the council and we need to approve.
Correct.
Even if it's $5.
Correct. Unless you want to change policy.
Do you think we should change policy?
No.
Thank you.
So, Dave, I had a question, a couple questions. So the work that they did last week, tying on the LDS Stake Center, you approved that back in June?
We approved that work directive actually May 31st.
And the only reason it was only done last week is because they're 3 to 6 months behind schedule.
Yeah, they're catching up.
And then,
They're behind, but they're catching up with the work that was authorized, yeah.
And then the other thing is the soft spots that I saw on the work they did last week on soft spots, that was approved back at that time too?
Soft spot repairs should have morphed and today morph into the full road replacement change that we already authorized on June 30th. So if there is a soft spot, we do have that as a cost control item here in this change order, yes. We're trying not to use that. We're trying to make sure that we're just doing the road replacement section that was authorized in the full width repair of the entire street. So the soft spot repairs technically should have stopped unless we hit something strange out there that's just really, really bad and needs something underneath what the full roadway replacement will be.
And so the $11,000, I think it's $11,000, I don't have it, but that was not done then. That's just a place marker on the change order?
These soft spots were already performed prior to the full roadway replacement change being authorized. So we shouldn't see any more soft spot repairs is what I'm trying to say. any further beyond these in this change order.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know who I'm directing this question to. My question is, if the council does not approve this change order today, what happens? They don't get paid for the work they did, or what?
Councilmember McConaughey.
Looked like Mr. Bricky had a response to Councilmember Burton before I proceed.
I have a legal conclusion. I don't like sharing them, but if the mayor and council would like me to share, I will at this point.
Please.
At this point, we have individuals working on behalf of the city that have the apparent authority to bind the city. The actual authority rests with you, the council. However, in this instance, because Knife River has proceeded forward and done the work, I think they would be able to argue successfully to a judge that they have detrimentally relied upon that representation. I think I can rest assured that we will work to make sure that that information gets to you in a quicker fashion. In hearing just Mr. Murphy's explanation, I have some ideas of how to address this going forward. It may not be relevant for this project now that we've hit that 10%, but it's something that I think I can sit down with him and the staff and come up with an idea to prevent something like this from happening in the future. But the bottom line is, if you should say no at this point, the work's been done, I think they could very reasonably expect a judge to rule against us.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on the information that's been shared, especially the comments from Mr. Bricky, I move to approve Resolution 17-178.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Let's vote.
Councilmember Burton,
Yes.
Mayor Rolfe,
No.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Newton,
As much as I don't like what's happened over there, I think they've done the work. I think we need to pay them. Aye.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
The vote passes 4-1 in favor.
We need a motion to move to closed session for the discussion of character, professional competence of, or physical or mental health of an individual, strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of water right or water shares. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be willing to make such a motion, but prior, I was wondering if I might be able to add a remark since we didn't have council reports.
That would be in order.
Okay. I just wanted to bring the council up to speed on the fleet meeting that we had earlier today. There are a couple items worthy of noting here with the council. Number one, talking about the fleet policy, or excuse me, the vehicle pool policy. Right now, we only really have 6 pool vehicles for the entire city, and 2 of them are allocated to development, 2 of them are allocated to administrative services, and 2 of them are just general, or excuse me, 2 of them are for public works. Although we see a whole lot more vehicles out in the parking lot than just the 6 that aren't really being used. Talking with Mr. Roche, who's over the fleet program, there may be some options for a little bit for streamlining the vehicle pooling policy. I want to know if there's a willingness from council to, if there's a desire from the council to hear directly from him in one of our upcoming meetings as to how the fleet program is being managed right now and what opportunities we might have for saving. Is there anyone who'd be opposed to an update on fleet? Okay. And then item number 2, one of the items discussed was geo-tracking. I think the company's called GeoTab, that is offering, location services for some of the vehicles, a little geo-tracker that you can put on the vehicle, you can see where it's been. They're moving forward with this, and I know in the past we've talked as a council about the desire that we have to allow residents to see where some of the city vehicles are, in particular the snow plows. So you can see when they've come down the street, how many times they've been down the street. We put so much money and resources into doing that. I'd really like to be able to open it up to the public so they can see that, yes, indeed, their streets are being plowed and how frequently has that happened. Or alternatively, which streets are being plowed if theirs aren't. I also think it'd be something that'd be helpful for the street sweepers and also for the pool vehicles to see how and when they're being used. They're already proceeding down the route, but I wanted to ask if the council would be okay giving direction to staff to expedite the snow plows, street sweepers, and the pool vehicles, so we have better data. Any objection?
Now you see the cost.
The cost on those is just under $20 per unit, which is what we're paying right now for the current service. We don't have the wiring or this has less hardware costs, so there's no incremental cost from the service that we're using right now. It's just switch over and $20 per car per month.
I have no opposition.
Okay. So I would then move that we move to a closed session and adjourn from there. And the purpose of that closed session would be, do I need to read each one of those points, or can I reference the points noted in the minute or in the agenda?
No, that's good.
Okay. That is my motion. Move to closed session to discuss the items noticed in the agenda and then adjourn from there.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion? Let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Rolfe,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Yes.
Councilmember Newton,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
The vote passes 5 in favor.
We will move to the administrative conference room and adjourn from there.